Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
After already visiting Europe and Asia this season, the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy heads to North America and the National Park of Speed Road America for round 3 of the championship. This broadcast is being brought to you on Apex Racing TV. My name is Sam Fitzpatrick, and alongside me for tonight's stream is Ron Mons with Smoothie Kumo bringing you this stream. And Ron, it's already been a dominant season, let's face it, for Antonino Sammarco, and we visit for the third consecutive week a very fast circuit that could well once again fall into the hands of that McLaren MP4-30.
I think things are looking very good for him. He has put on some fantastic shows throughout the season. We just saw him go through in the other back a shot there as we are on Scenic right now as he went through the carousel. But I think Sammarco has a really good shot to get his third win in a row. He's been dominant throughout this year, and whenever we get to see him, it's like watching Da Vinci paint. You know, it's just you're seeing an artist. I'm not really comparing race car driving to artistry, but it's nice seeing a driver just be able to dance that car around a track so effortlessly, and that's definitely what Sammarco has done this year. And I think at a track that you said is very similar to Spa and Fuji that we visited so far this year, I think we might see another dominant performance from Marco. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yes, well, he's currently out on circuit just preparing for his first qualifying lap. And of course, as has been the case for the past couple of rounds, well, the last round at least a 60-minute race for tonight. First up, we've got this 32-minute qualifying session where each of the classes get pretty much 10 minutes out on circuit each. The pros get 12 minutes, but that's just because the time runs out and they can't complete their lap time, unlike the other classes. Here is the lead that Sammarco has already built up in the championship, 14 points clear of Kazuki Fujita, and yeah, very much looking to extend that further on tonight. And yeah, in the Pro-Am Championship as well, all looking very good at the moment for our current leader, Jack Wells and Blaž Turovsky, who are currently joint lead in that championship. And, you know, whilst the pros have been dominant for Sammarco, it must be said, Ron, I think, you know, in the other classes it has been ever so close. I think the Pro-Ams in particular with Jack Wells sort of under the radar, being able to take the championship lead going into this round.
I agree with the point you made, how the rest of the classes here on the ARL GT3 trophy have really been a toss-up, for lack of a better word. Certainly in the AM category, which has always been very interesting for me to watch. We saw David Vey win the first race in the AM category. He put on a very good drive at the first race of the season in Spa. I believe he finished top 20 overall, and unfortunately for him, after a mistake that we saw, I don't even believe it was a mistake from him. I think he just got caught up in an accident that really wasn't his fault. He dropped through the order, so tough break for him. We'll have to definitely the AM category will be what I'll be looking at, but right now you can look at the pro standings now. Pro-Am standings.
Yes, and yeah, sure, there's going to be plenty more changes towards the at the end of this race, because as you said, there was a little bit of an upset for a couple of the amateur drivers last time out, and they'll be looking to bounce back, but particularly in those pro-ams, and the Am's all about that consistency. And well, so far, no one being able to absolutely put their foot on the championship. But well, if we have a look at the AMs there, and yeah, you can see that strong start that David Vey got off to the championship back at Spa. But yeah, losing a few points at Fuji last time out with a non-finish. But at the moment, in the qualifying session, we have got a little bit of a mix-up, because we have Marcus Byfeld right up at the top of the standings, and you can see a white stripe as Antonino Sammarco goes to the top of the standings. He'll still have a couple more laps for him to be able to set. But Byfeld there, an amateur driver, up in 3rd position. He's only a couple of tenths off pole position. What a performance from the Swedish driver.
That's a fantastic lap from him, to be less than 0.3 of a second off of Sammarco, who's been the dominant force all this season, and sure, he's on pole now, but still, the fact that Byfeld has been just, I mean, that's a fantastic lap from him. He's ahead of, obviously, all the AM drivers, all the Pro-Am drivers, and all but 2 of the Pro drivers, so that's an absolutely amazing lap from him. So hopefully for his sake, that would lead to some very intriguing racing if we could have an AM driver starting on the 2nd row. Hopefully, cross our fingers, hope for the best, for him at least, that he can stay up there and that his time sticks. Right now, it's looking very good. He put together a very good time. You can see the gap between him and Anders Meyer. That was a fantastic lap there from Byfeld as he sits in 3rd.
Yeah, and of course, he's very much the one who can't do anything at the moment. The amateurs have already had their qualifying session complete. It's just the pros out on circuit to the end of this session, and so he's just got to wait and hope that he can stay in some of those positions. Dare I say, I believe this is Marcus's first appearance so far this season, part of the Street Trends racing team, who are always really good in Apex Racing League events. Chris Cook, very much a regular, also an amateur driver and one of the many Scandinavian drivers we have in Apex Racing League. But Byfeld's a new appearance in that one. And yeah, he is really performing above his 2.2k iRating at the moment. Here's Kazuki Fujita. Didn't have a great time actually at his home event last time out. 2nd place at Spa. Only 6th position back at Fuji, however. Had a couple of setbacks, including a poor qualifying. This is a better qualifying so far for him, but in 7th position, he would very much like to at least get ahead of Montini and Rosseth, and preferably onto the 2nd row of the grid if possible.
Yeah, I'm sure he definitely wants to start higher up on the grid, because that's what cost him dearly as home race in Fuji. Just he started, I think he was just barely inside the top 20, if I remember correctly, and had to claw his way through the field. Certainly put together a pretty decent race to manage to get the position he did, but still had a few incidents throughout the race, which was fairly chaotic last time. We saw a couple incidents sprinkled all throughout the field. We saw a driver flipping at the final corner after they hit the massive sausage curb on the inside of the final corner at Fuji. So I don't think we'll see anything like that here at Road Americas. We don't have those massive killer curbs that can munch up your safety rating here on iRacing, but I do think that we'll see a bit of chaos, I believe. I think we have some parts of the track that will be very inviting for the drivers to try and go for an overtake, especially here going into turn 5, which is one of the heaviest braking zones on the track, going very fast into this corner and then going hard on the brakes for a tight left 90, and then into the middle section of the track where some drivers might spread out a little bit with the dirty air. But I think we'll see a bit more incidents throughout this race, just because these drivers want to try and get past each other, and certain parts of this track are very appeasing when you try and pull off an overtake.
We saw a big shunt last time out at Fuji on lap 1 at the chicane, and turn 5 does very much remind me of that chicane, and I do fear for the drivers if they aren't sensible, if we have some movement under braking potentially, if we have a couple of drivers locking brakes, it could be very problematic for the drivers out there. So hopefully, and we have got our fingers crossed, we'll have as many of these 51 drivers that we have out here tonight. But it's even more than that, it's 52 drivers now. Absolutely packed field. Hopefully they all get through nice and cleanly on the one race start we have tonight. Antonino Samarco is flying along. He has set 3 purple sectors to start off this lap. He could well extend his lead. One of the stats that was incredible last time at Fuji, honestly, was his fastest lap in the race was half a second faster than the next fastest lap. Half a second is a huge margin, particularly at Fuji. And so it really does just show the dominance he's got. So frankly, the fact that Rangan's got within 2/10 is a very good effort. But dare I say, I think that 2/10 is about to grow.
Yeah, I think that gap is definitely going to grow for the pole position here for Samarco, but you can see the graphic that we have on the bottom of the screen going through Sector 3, which is mostly in that very tight and twisty section in the middle part of this track. You can see that the gap between Samarco and Wangan was actually fairly small there. You can see only a little over a hundredth and a half there in the third sector, so very close there as he does improve his time now, nearly 3/10 up on Wangan. But we were thinking at the start of the season when we saw the pace that Samarco had during the opening sessions, certainly through the practice session at Spa, we were thinking that Samarco and his McLaren might be very fast, strictly on the tracks that are very fast in terms of the straight line speed. And I think at a track like this, where you do have a lot of fast, flat-out sections, that's what's helping Samarco here, but at a track which also has a lot of very tight and twisty sections, that might be the reason why that gap between Samarco and Wangan is very close this week.
Still enough for Samarco seemingly to take pole position. Wangan won't be able to complete this next lap as Olivieri crosses the line. He moves up to 9th position. He had a very action-packed Fuji race, but that's a solid qualifying for him to be up in the top 10. Montini currently top of the Prams. He was another Joe who had a very entertaining race. A bit of a miserable day actually in the end. Fuji led in the Pram category for much of the race, but sort of fell away at the end of both halves of the race. Despite possessing very good pace, he wasn't able to get a top 10 result. Here is Ketzel Larsen for IGL Coatings e-racing by Sunday Trexskol. His name for this season for a team, and the Norwegian will be able to complete his lap time before the 32 minutes are up, and he will wanting to get a fair bit further up. You can see it is very close in front of him, just a couple of tenths could put him up in the top 15. Is he able to improve Larsen? No, he is not. In fact, that last lap was 100th slower than his previous best lap. Anders Meyer, he improves. He's up to 3rd position. Great effort there from the Racing Lab Esports driver. Looks like Marcus Beifeld is going to keep his second row start because no one else is improving, and we are about to cross the line. What about Kolnagi though? Kolnagi crosses the line but did not improve. He did get that last lap in, did the Italian driver, and we have got some support for the Italians already in the YouTube chat. Very much happy to have you guys along. Mario Kart's there, very much saying Forza all the Italians. If we could get that for every other nationality, that would be very nice for everyone else who's watching along. About 36 people, so very much thanks for watching, and hopefully this race is entertaining enough for you guys. Antonino Samarco then with his 3rd pole position of the season ahead of Thomas Wangan, and as Meyer starts in 3rd place. An incredible qualifying for Marcus Beifeld on his debut in Apex Racing League. There's Niels Erik Isaacson. Tommaso Montini is top of the Pro-Ams. Then it's Lasse Sorensen and Eric Rosse. Behind him is Emmanuel Oliveri and Kazuki Fujitsu rounding out the top 10. Then it is Daniel Dennison. Good qualifying actually for Daniel. Matej Kolnagi in 12th position. Then it's Marcus Gunzelman, Taj Edwards, Balash Taroshki, Thomas Asfag, Stephen David, Jack Wells, Carl Winkler, Roberto Castellozzi, Ketzel Larsen, Jeremy De Voiver is 2nd place out of the ants. Then it's Simon Moldekleeve, Soren Kroll, Adam Starzinski, and dare I say, I think we're going to just have to let the rest of the field go through because it is a short formation lap, and so we will be getting underway in just a few moments' time. for this round 3 of the championship here at Road America. And well, it could very much be deja vu potentially, because Antonino Sammarco once again on pole position and looking to convert for his 3rd consecutive race win in the series, as he takes the drivers to the start-finish line right now, and it's his control as to when he decides to put his foot down and lets the field get underway. He holds them. Now the green flag is waved, and Sammarco brings us to the green flag, and already a strong start for Anders Meyer, looking to get up into 2nd position immediately. Sammarco managing to get about a 0.4 of a second advantage, but Meyer making that move, consolidating, and in fact also Tommaso Montini being able to make up a place. And we have got some cars into the wall, and I think that was Turoski involved, and a few drivers on the outskirts of the top 20. And now we've got another incident on the run to turn 2.
Oh, that is an absolute pile up there. That is carnage towards the back of the field. There's a big stack up there. A driver was very loose there and kind of stopped there, then got hit by a Mercedes, and just havoc ensues behind it. Tough break for a lot of these drivers. For the 2nd week in a row, we saw chaos on lap 1 as cars are scattered all over the track. We see Stephen David has towed back to the pits in his Lamborghini. We're going to get a replay here of the carnage here. You just see cars scattering all over the track. There's a Porsche of Sorensen there. He was kind of stopped there in front of the Mercedes, and it just creates a massive stack up there with, it had to be 10 plus cars involved in there. Certainly a lot of drivers with damage. You can see the steering wheel inputs there from Jack Wells, pretty much having to turn at 90 degrees to the right just to keep in a straight line. So tough start for a lot of these drivers.
Yeah, really tough stuff for a lot of these guys straight away. Yeah, just the narrow nature of this circuit really causing a bottleneck and causing a lot of incidents straight away in this race. So Marco's still leading the way, and yeah, managing to get away from most of that mess. And of course the drivers will get a faster pair, so we'll be trying to get back out on circuit very quickly.
That was just total chaos there. You know, we mentioned it earlier in this broadcast how I think we might see a bit more chaos with some very tight sections of this track. There's no real asphalt runoff to speak of. It's definitely a very old school track, this Road America, and I was expecting some chaos, and we definitely got there on lap 1 as cars were scattering all over the place. But for Antonio Sammarco, it was a very good start. Even though he dropped back positions, it was also a good start there from Byfeld, who's currently running in 6th. He got overtaken there by Montini. They were going side by side going into the first corner. But even though he has dropped back from a 4th place start down to 6th, that's still a fantastic start from him. If he can keep it up there, that'd be a great run from him, because currently the 2nd place runner in Moldecleve is 10 positions behind. So I'm sure Marcus, in that very stand-out looking car, that's a beautiful looking car. I've always loved cars that stand out on the grid. So if Byfeld can keep that position and keep the car on the road, I think he'll be in for a very great drive. It was Byfeld and more drivers. There's Wangen. He had a rough start there, lost a position there to Anders Meyer. So not sure what happened there. I think he just got passed there by Meyer while we were looking at the replay of the just absolute carnage that ensued there as they went through turn 2 and into turn 3. Close stuff all throughout this field. This is some clean stuff up towards the front, but back of the back, that was just total chaos. I can't really wrap my head around that. There was just so much happening there. There's like 5 incidents there. Oh, we're seeing some battling here. That's Christopher Crook, actually, I believe, is a lap down. He was involved in that lap 1 schism there, and he's kind of throwing a monkey in the works here as they try and unlap themselves from Byfeld, I believe that is. Oh, sorry, my apologies. They are on the same lap. It was just the other Byfeld and Crook car, I believe, look very similar. My apologies for that. So those drivers are battling for position. My apologies there, but that was some close stuff there with Gordon Haug, who I've seen quite a few times in the other Radical Racing Challenge that I cover here on Apex Racing TV as well. And he's put together a clean drive. I believe he's made up a few spots, so we'll have to wait and see how some of these drivers can cut through the field. We saw a couple weeks ago a lot of drivers just cut through the field like a hot knife through butter. I believe Fujita was one of the drivers that made up the most amount of positions throughout the Fuji race. That was some great stuff for him there. So hopefully for some of these drivers, they can put in some fantastic performances, and we can see some great overtaking sprinkled all throughout this race. We're seeing some carnage there. Trevor's going 3 wide. There's some close stuff here, but I believe they all get through clean. This is towards the front. I see Fujita involved in that.
Yeah, a little bit of a setback there. I think is that Thomas Vangen losing a place to Eric Rosser. And yeah, that BMW clearly very damaged, and yeah, having to move out of the way are many of the other drivers. But Rothers hasn't necessarily got this one complete, and Vangen is coming back, and Vangen is through and back up into 6th position, trying to recover after a poor few first laps. 242 looking to get back into turn 6, but it was not possible for him right there. As we have a replay of well, what happened to Thomas Vangen, why he is a little bit further down the order, and it was that initial contact with the BMW. He was staying as tight as he possibly could to the inside, and once that contact was made, he lost 4 positions very quickly.
I think we're going to see that throughout this race because, of course, here in the ARL GT3 series here on Apex Racing TV, we do have pit stops to negotiate. And I think what we might see towards the middle of this race, when the drivers are coming in to the pits and trying to exit there with a very... Ooh, boy, that's some close stuff there. Basically, 150-mile-an-hour lawnmower was what Wangen's car just turned into. That was some close stuff there. But getting back to the point that I was mentioning there before Wangen had that massive moment there coming through the kink, I think we might see a bit more carnage like that with drivers coming out of the pits and other drivers just trying to swoop around them on their hot tires. That'll be something to look out for in the middle stage of this race.
Yeah, the track position will change a lot, and with so many drivers out of position as well so far, there's a lot of field spreads, and yeah, that effect is only going to be exaggerated. You can see ahead, actually, Marcus Beifeld was off the circuit, and Vangen nowhere near making the corner there. And once he got on the grass, just had to make the best of a bad job. Here is some more overtaking. Vangen able to stay in that 6th position, but Kolnagi now ahead of Rosser. So Kolnagi showing some good pace at the moment. He has had good pace in the first couple of rounds, and it was Daniel Dennison who's had a strong start, actually up 1 place as Dennison, and he was looking to get past the Italian as well.
I always love seeing these Porsches battle. I always love fantastic battles here with GT3 racing. It always provides a unique angle in motorsports because you've got different cars battling for the same position. We're seeing a BMW there with Dennison battling with a handful of Porsches. Alison very close there with Oliveri. They nearly made contact going down the straightaway. And then Dennison and Rosseth, who are currently running in the last 2 podium positions in the Pro-Am category. Those 2 drivers got very close. That was some very tense stuff there, but they all managed to get through clean. It's nice to have a clean streak after that very hectic start.
Yeah, everyone getting into a bit more of a rhythm. And because there's so many drivers out there on circuit, it was, well, if there was an incident, wasn't necessarily more likely to have an incident, but it was just if there was going to be an incident, it was going to be even bigger, and that is absolutely what we saw. We thought turn 5 might be the area of problem, but instead it was the entry and exit of turn 1. As we have seen it in the past, that exit of turn 1 is ever so narrow. Now the walls very much crowd the circuit. We're watching Emmanuel Oliveri in this continuing entertaining battle. Has allowed Kolnagi to really pull away very quickly. Kolnagi only got ahead at the start of this lap, but Oliveri has already dropped back, and Eric Rosser having a poor lap himself, now down 1 place from his start. So I think Oliveri also getting past on this lap, past Rosser. And so the Italian is ahead of the Norwegian. This train goes back pretty much to Thomas Asberg, who is in the lead of the Pro-Am Championship going into this round, or joint lead with Jack Wells. So good points for Asberg at the moment in 14th place overall. As it looks like Oliveri will just about hang on to that 8th position for now. Behind, Engel has got past Moldekleef. Moldekleef having a fantastic run of it. 2nd place out of the Owls, which is basically leader because Beifeld is so far ahead. But Engel actually wasn't able to get past. Now there's going to be a bit of a fight, and you can see the damage that Moldekleef has already picked up in this race. It isn't affecting him too much when it comes to pace, but this battling with Engel certainly is. And Jeremy De Boyver and Navarro De Boyver, the 2 siblings, are right on their case now.
Gotta imagine Moldekleef was in the midst of that lap on carnage there, but it's definitely, as you said, not affecting the pace as he's trying to battle with Engel up ahead, and we're seeing a absolute swarm. It's like a bee's nest of cars behind him. You've got Mercedes and Porsches battling in this camera shot. That was definitely contact there. But with Moldecleve there, that was Moldecleve and Angle as they went through turn 5, my apologies, side by side. They made a bit of contact there. Oh, there's a car spinning back there. I'm not entirely sure what that is. That's smart, yeah. Another rough race for the Track Scotland team. They had a rough going of things last week. We saw their drivers involved in multiple incidents all throughout the day. So tough break for Smart there as he's now down in 28th position, loses 2 positions compared to how he was at at the start of the race with that small little moment there as he went through turn 7.
Smarts is a former. I think Smart won the LMP2 AM championship in the past, as Isaacson has got past Montini. And I think that was just a fair move there. Through Canada corner, Montini hasn't lost a whole lot of time, I believe. Well, he lost about half a second, actually. Well, I say that, a second and a half. So I think it was a mistake, actually, from Montini through Canada corner. You can see he did have a bit of a break previously to Isaacson, but it very quickly evaporated. Just a little bit too much speed, and then I think he spun up the tyres on the grass and a change of position for the last place on the rostrum.
At a track like this where there's so many heavy braking zones, you'll definitely see a lot of drivers trying to push their cars to the absolute limit, trying to get every 10th, every 100th, every 1000th of a second they can. And unfortunately for Montini, that cost him a little bit there. And right now we're seeing some battling towards that front pack. We've got the AM driver there, Marcus Beifeld, currently running in 5th. A fantastic race from him, only down 1 position from where he started. And then you have Montini up ahead, who's the leader of the Pro-Am drivers. And then is Saxon, who's currently running in 3rd, overall in 3rd of the Pro drivers. So we've got 3 different classes, all Porsches, and all of them are battling for their positions. And we're seeing some more Porsche battling here. It's always seeing so many Porsches throughout this field, it can be a bit hard to keep track of all of it. But we're seeing Collishaw there get past with a fairly commanding move there going into turn 5. Clean moves throughout this race, and I think we'll definitely see a lot of overtaking with the heavy braking opportunities, so we'll just have to wait and see if that's the case throughout this race.
Yannick Willems, of course, winning in the amateur category back at Fuji quite comfortably as well. I think it was something like 21st position for the Frenchman, apologies, for the Belgian by the end of the race. But only 6th place at the moment. He had a poor qualifying, 41st place on the grid for Yannick. And considering that you get 10 minutes to set a lap time, admittedly it's a long lap here, so you don't get as many laps as you would normally, but still about 4 or so that you would score. It didn't seem to get an especially strong one, and so he is on the comeback chart, up 15 places there, Yannick, avoiding many of the incidents on lap 1. Nice move there from Jeremy de Boiver. He's got past Simon Moldecleve, and I think Navarro de Boiver has just failed to make that overtake. And so it's Jeremy up now in 2nd place in the amateur category.
It was going to be a very bold move there from De Boiver if he managed to get that move done going through the penultimate corner while going into the penultimate corner there. That would have been awesome stuff. I was kind of like tensing up there, like, oh no, that's very close. That's contact there. That's a big off there. That could be a pileup. We're seeing multiple one driver spinning around. We saw another driver get caught up. I believe that was Collishaw who got clipped there by Nylander. So tough for those drivers. Nylander, I've got to imagine he had to have some kind of bump drifting gone wrong there. We're gonna get a replay. This is not an area of the course where you're going to lose it most of the time, so I've got to imagine something cataclysmically wrong went here. Was that hardware failure possibly? Yeah, that's. Yeah, you can see you can see the front tire just turned all the way to the left. So tough for him that a hardware failure can take him out of. Well, it's looking like a decent running. He was running inside the top 20, I believe, or just outside, and unfortunately for him, he's now down in 51st, hopelessly out of contention.
It's been a poor lap. Apologies, that's just another very much damaged Simulating Norway car of Horde. Looks very similar to Simon Moldecleve's car. And so I did think, oh, poor lap it's been for Moldecleve. But no, it's just his teammate dropping positions as well. As Isaacson has crashed. Isaacson into the wall.
Oh, that's a big crash there. That's cars going off all over the place.
And it's going to be another big incident. Oliveri involved in it as well. along with our AM leader. Unfortunately, I cannot clearly see these pictures, but I can judge by your reaction there.
Oh, I'm not sure where that was. That might have been Colneghi. I could be mistaken there. I think that was maybe Montini there.
Maybe.
Yeah, Oliveri. My apologies there. That it looked like he was going to go through just threading the needle. We saw a driver threading the needle at the first race of the season in Spa, and I got a recollection of that. And oh boy, that was close. It looked like he was going to hold on to it, but tough for him that he still gets caught up in that crash. We're getting more replays here. Just incidents that you see at very narrow sections of a race course there. Saxon there involved, many drivers involved, a lot of them picking up some damage. So we've seen the early stages of this race, a lot of carnage, a lot of drivers getting involved in picking up damage. And Oliveri was involved with it. A lot of the drivers that were running inside the top 10 picked up some kind of damage. And I mentioned a little while ago how the gap between Moldecleve and Byfeld for the AM category lead was pretty far, because Byfeld was like very far up the order, and then Moldecleve was running, I believe, outside the top 20 or just barely in it. And now you can see from the running order, Byfeld is in 8th, and then De Boyer, who's currently the second place runner in the AM category, right now he is in 13th, so those drivers are very close. We might see a battle heat up in the AM category. We're seeing battles all over the place with damaged cars as well.
Yeah, Tommaso Montini with a huge amount of damage on his car. What a night this might be for Daniel Dennison, has been able to avoid all the mess somehow, including that big incident at the kink. And he now sits in a very good position. So do these guys, to be fair. Jeremy De Boer now up to 13th place. And despite the damage for Simon Moldecleve, he's in 14th. He should be able to pit fairly soon as well, within the next sort of 10 minutes or so, as Dennison now has taken the lead of the Pro-Am category. With the damage from Montini, it's absolutely no surprise. But Montini's tried to come back, and Dennison is now in the wall. Well, this Pro-Am lead fight, this top 10 generally, just keeps on changing, and it seemed like Dennison was able to get past, and there must have been contact with Montini as the Italian tried to respond and retake that Pro-Am lead.
Chaos that we thought was going to happen has definitely happened in the first 17 minutes of this race. We're going to get a replay of the incident there with Dennison. That was contact there, and Dennison just has no way to make that corner. Makes contact there. I believe he'll get away with just a little bit of damage. Thankfully, in the series, we do have fast repairs for these drivers if they do have a bit of a bump there, but Montini and Dennison have contact there going into Canada corner, and it cost both of those drivers dearly as they're now trundling down the pit lane, trying to fix the damage they picked up.
Timmy Nylander, after early issues for the Street Trends racing driver, he's coming back out and trying to avoid a similar incident as we saw Thomas Vangen get involved in earlier on. Thomas Vangen involved in that kink issue as well, which very much has ruled him out. But Dennison has had to go back to the pits, in fact, so the damage maybe was too much for Dennison. I thought he may have got away with it, like you mentioned, but that was not the case. Here comes Navarro De Boer. He has been able to get past Simon Moldecleve this time and is up into 12th position. And behind Moldecleve next is the Englishman of Thomas Pugh, up 24 places total is Pugh. Highest gainer though is PJ Clayson's, up 32 places. PJ always doesn't do qualifying. I don't know what goes through that man's head. But he always gains a lot of places, and he's right in the box seat to getting places tonight. Up 32 places, and dare I say, he might be close to 40 places gained by the end of this race.
That's not one-off either. Looking through the rest of the field, you got Taj Edwards up 10, you've got Carl Winkler up 14, you've got Castellozzi up 13, you've got Otterholt up 23, you've got drivers cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter. Sure, the chaos that we've seen in the early stage of this race might have had something to do with that, but still, these drivers keeping their cars clean, and I mean, as the old saying goes, to finish first you have to finish, and a lot of these drivers are just trying to keep their cars on the road, not try and get caught up in an incident that's playing dividends for a lot of those drivers that have cut through the field really quickly. Fantastic stuff for a lot of those drivers, and as you said, we might see some drivers gain like 40 positions by the end of this. So this is some very interesting stuff here. We're seeing some nice battling here towards the outside of the top 10. Castellozzi involved in this battle. He's the head of this group of cars here, all running in the Pro-Am category, but just absolutely awesome stuff there. It's always nice to see intriguing storylines to follow throughout the field. You can't have a great race without great storylines, and we certainly have buckets full of those at the moment.
Yeah, so many different events going on so far in the race. It will be fascinating to have some interviews with the drivers post-race, see exactly what's their perspective of each of these incidents that we've seen so far have been. But Castellozzi top of the Pro-Am drivers, as far as scoring some good points. So too Otto Holt. This one is very close though. Ethan Bass up 22 places. I'm not sure what happened to Bass in qualifying. Getting a little bit of an underachiever, but he's been able to keep the car clean so far. It's been an unlucky season to be fair for Bass, particularly back at Spa. He was involved in a netcode instance, if I recall correctly. I think he was involved in a netcode incident up Eau Rouge, in fact, and got wiped out. I don't think Fuji went too well for him either, if I recall correctly. So in 14th place, up for scoring a lot of points. And Kieran Smart, actually, who we saw spun round earlier on in the race, he's actually up 9 places. His fellow Scottishman, pretty near up there as well. As we see Thomas Asfalg take the lead of the Pro-Am category. He's got past Roberto Castellozzi, as we see another crash now at the kink, and this time it's Simon Mouldercleave, and he is not going to be able to get that car back to the pits, and will tow back because that thing is absolutely done.
Just crab walking there as he went down the straightaway going into Canada corner, rightfully doing the smart thing there, parking the car and towing back, because even if you can drive it back to the pits doesn't mean you should, because having a car like that crab walking down the final few corners of this circuit, it would just really be dangerous. So Mouldercleave doing the right thing there and towing back. Tough for him. He was running second of the AM drivers, and now he is going to be hopelessly out of contention as he had to tow back. Tough race for a lot of these drivers, a lot of mistakes that we've seen throughout this race. We mentioned that we might see a lot of chaos throughout this race, and we certainly have. And I've got to imagine this track layout is conducive to that kind of creating these kind of chaotic races, because you've got very tight sections, not a lot of asphalt runoff to speak of. Really, the only bit of asphalt runoff you have is going through turn 5 and Canada corner, and a few other just patches of asphalt if you're lucky. But I think that would be something that we might have to ask a lot of these drivers, whether this the nature of this circuit here in Road America is conducive to a lot of these chaotic races and a lot of incidents that we've seen so far tonight.
Yeah, I think the main thing that has got them out is the narrowness of the track off the circuit, and how close the walls are. And it's very much a pinball effect where once you hit one wall, you're back on the circuit, and that is when pile-ups can happen. So Nick Yanni in 14th position, ahead of Smart, albeit might not be for very long because he's just run wide as Nick Yanni. And this has opened up the door for Smart, who is carrying some damage, but that's not stopping him. Brilliant move around the outside at the carousel. And the Track Scotland driver, the Apex Racing League veteran, has gained a couple of places in quick succession, and he's now got his fellow Scot only a few seconds up the road, 3.5 seconds to be precise. But you can see that he's 41 seconds off the lead, 23 minutes into the race. He does demonstrate the field split that we've got so far, but yeah, Smart's got some clean air now, and he'll be very grateful for that. By the way, out in the lead, we haven't really seen our leader for the most of this race. That's Nino Samarco still absolutely dominating. 1.9 seconds up the road, as Taj Edwards, I think, has had an issue at turn 1 perhaps. He's not in the wall fortunately, he has just dropped 2 places. Was running in 4th place, and his best race of the season was the Orion Race Team driver, and this is what happened to him.
I don't wonder if he just dropped a wheel off coming through turn 1. We'll get a replay here to see what exactly happened to him. Very big slide there just going into the corner, and that's what cost him there. Not a huge moment there as he managed to hold on to it and keep it on the road and keep it out of the barriers, the most important part. But still tough there for Taj Edwards, who loses 2 positions in the span of 1 corner. Yeah, just an unusual one for him. And
losing the rear end at turn 1. But still, good points at the moment for the Jamaican driver as we see Maya B pushing it. 16 seconds the gap between second and third. Incredible stuff. I'm surprised Kolnagi isn't much closer. But yeah, he's using about half a second a lap. Gap isn't extending quite as much as it was earlier on. But there's so many drivers have had incidents ahead of Kolnagi that he sort of inherited that third position, albeit it is a comfortable third position, I understand. Maya, though, on that last lap, 0.3 of a second faster. And if Anders is going to challenge for this championship, he very much needs to start taking points out of Samarco. And this is a good lap again for him to continue to chip away at that lead. This time round, he gains 0.4 of a second. Great work from the Norwegian driver, and he's keeping himself right in play just before the pit stops start to kick off.
What this is for Anders Meyer is a recovery drive. It's a chance for redemption after that dramatic incident we saw with him in Fuji when he barrel rolled it like 6 times coming out of the final corner after he hit the inside sausage curb. So what we're seeing here from Anders Meyer is a very good drive, very composed drive. As you mentioned, he is closing that gap to Samarco and is pulled away from Kolnagi. That is Kolnagi right now. Oh, Kolnagi might have made a mistake. He has. Must have had a big moment there coming through turn 1. That was the worst commentator's jinx I've ever pulled. I feel bad for him there as he goes off, picks up a lot of damage, and has to tow. His race has definitely gone down the tubes. We're going to get a replay of what happened here, but that was definitely my worst commentator's jinx yet.
Oh, someone crashed in front of him.
Oh,
what
no.
unluckiness.
Oh,
man. He's not going to be happy.
Well, hopefully there's no thunderstorms where he
Walsh.
lives.
No, it was Thomas Burns. And
Just
again,
simple mistake that he can make there, and just nowhere for Mattia Kolnagi to go. I hope there isn't any thunderstorms where he lives at the moment, because if he's with that level of poor luck that we just saw with that incident there, he might get struck by lightning tonight if he has any worse luck. So tough there for Kolnagi. Really nothing he can do there.
That means that Carl Winkler's up to 3rd place. He started 19th. Marcus Beifeld, despite being involved in that big incident at the Kink earlier on in the race, seemingly got away with it without too much damage. And he's sort of been coming back ever since. And we could well see an amateur driver on the podium. But what I would say is that Marcus is very likely to be upgraded to a pro driver after this race. This is his first appearance, I believe, this season. Certainly hasn't scored any points so far this season, has Marcus. And so, very much an unknown quantity, but that 2.2k iRacing that he has at the moment, very unrepresentative. I'm sure he'll be getting up there in the near future. He's driving like a 4k plus driver at the moment, and he might be able to get past Carl Winkler, a bit with half a second the gap. I think he'll have to wait a little bit later in the lap. For the first time, there are some gaps between the drivers. It's not just trains anymore of cars, there is a bit of spreading out. And that is probably a good thing when it comes to everyone just getting into their rhythm, and we are probably only about 10 minutes away from, or 5 minutes away from the pit stop starting and 10 minutes away from them ending. So do keep an eye out on that one, see if anyone tries to pull up on it undercuts.
Gotta wonder, because we've seen throughout this season as well, we saw in Spa where it kind of shocked us that drivers were taking tires, and we also saw in Fuji where drivers were taking tires as well. I gotta wonder what kind of tire strategy some of these drivers might do, because at a track like this, you are definitely leaning on those tires, especially coming through the carousel. So I think we might see drivers take, well, definitely take 2, maybe even, actually I say that, I don't think they'll take 4 tires, because of the amount of time that you lose in a pit stop taking 4 tires. I don't think the drivers would be able to justify losing that much time in the pits, because the pits are extremely important. We've seen field shuffles of mighty proportions just with the way the pit stops go. So we'll have to see what happens in this race, and one thing that I'll really have to keep an eye out on is during this next round of pit stops, as we're seeing some battling outside the top 10. But getting back to the point I was going to mention is we saw in race 1 and race 2 as well, where Antonio Samarco in that McLaren, the lone McLaren in the field, the McLaren seemed to be gulping fuel a lot more than the BMWs for sure, because we saw Fujita in race 1 at Spa. He was able to stay out on track for probably about 5 minutes more, I believe, than Samarco in the McLaren. So that will be nice to see what Anders Meyer can do. Maybe if he can stay out long enough after some Marco pits, he might be able to take the lead through strategy. That'll be something to look out for.
There goes Kieran Smarts up to 12th position. Teboyva went off the circuit earlier on in this lap. I think that sort of puts him into the clutches of Navarro. Teboyva has gone off the circuit a couple of times recently, and so that put him into the clutches of Smarts and Smart. Now up to 12th position on circuits. Teboyva still third place outside the AMs as Chris Crook is having one of his best races in Apex Racing League. Generally a very good day for Street Trends Sim Racing as it stands, and he has decided to come into the pit. So I did say that, well, I mean, the pit window has been open for 7 or 8 minutes, and he is taking tyres, interestingly. But like you said, probably not all 4 tyres. That would lose you probably about 8 seconds on top of your fuel. But if you just take 2 tyres, that adds no time to your pit stop, because those tyres will be added before you have added all your fuel in. So you can take them as a free choice, but of course it can upset the balance of the car potentially. Most likely front tyres will almost certainly not be taken, but rear tyres, like you were saying before, at Spa in particular, was a very common choice.
Just want to make one point real quick. If you, Sam, and the other viewers at home will draw their attention to the leaderboard, you'll see that there's only 10 pro drivers in the top 25. So we've seen chaos at the front of the field, which took out a fair amount of the pro drivers, certainly gave them a lot of damage, which has affected them. And right now in the top 25 right now, only 10 pro drivers. So we're seeing a whole lot of pro-am. We're seeing a lot of AM drivers as well. Considering that Byfeld, currently running in 4th, was one of the, I believe, the only driver that started in the top 15 of the AM competitors. Right now in the top 15, we have 3 AM drivers, I believe, and in the top 25, we've got a whole bucket full of them. So we're seeing a nice style of racing where we're not really seeing the pro driver. Certainly this man, Sorensen, who was caught up in that incident earlier in this race. And we're seeing a tough luck, a whole amount of tough luck for the pro drivers, and we're seeing the pro-ams and the AMs.
Has crashed. Asphalt has crashed at the final corner. He's crashed again in his attempts to recover. He can come into the pits. That's what he's trying to do. Yeah, that's why he's trying to get such a tight angle here, so he can manage to turn it into the pits. But the driver's going to come into the pits. There goes the 206. They dive each way, and the AV driver behind had to stop as well. Well, Thomas Asphalt just tried his best there, honestly. There wasn't a whole lot he could do. He had to try to get that stricken car back to the pit lane. But Thomas, who was, I believe, the amateur pro-am leader, apologies. I think he was battling with Castellossi, wasn't he? And maybe it was Castellossi. No, that wasn't Castellossi. Just behind. Maybe he was ahead. Apologies, wasn't ahead. Maybe he was behind. Just runs a little bit wide. Very common mistake there. And he clearly wasn't planning on coming to the pits because he was taking a very wide line through that final corner. And then for everyone else who was trying to come into the pits, and remember, a lot of them would have had limitations on fuel. They were diving in, and Asphalt managed to avoid them all.
I believe that was DeBover and Koloshaw who we saw in the 2 Porsches that went by Asphalt on 2 separate ways. That was very close there. I was my untimely yodeling there can definitely show you what my feelings were as I saw those 2 Porsches blast by him there on the pit entry. That was extremely close, and those drivers exit out just outside the other top 20, I believe. So we'll have to see what position they end up in once these pit stops are done and dusted for. But I was going to mention this earlier in the race as we're seeing some Marco in. Forget the point that I was going to mention. The 2 front runners. I'm surprised that Meyer is coming in as quickly as Marco is. That is a bit surprising. Maybe he's coming in around the same time. I was just going to take less fuel to try and jump him in the pits, because we've seen Marco has been dominant. He's been the dominant force on track. So maybe Anders Meyer is thinking that he'll just have to be the dominant force on pit road to try and take the lead of this race. We'll see these drivers exit the pits shortly here, Sam.
They're both going up on the jack, so 2 tyres being taken, one would assume. They're really not far away from being able to take 3 tyres. Oh, sorry, 4 tyres. They could probably take 3 tyres, honestly, but that'd be a weird strategy. But yeah, the pit stop times are creeping up to sort of 21, 22 seconds. So actually taking all 4 tires would only lose you about 4 seconds. As Meyer has cut the gap down, he was 0.8 of a second faster in pit road, but that gap is still about 1.5 seconds. I think he just was outside the draft was Meyer. Wasn't able to save a whole lot of fuel. And pretty much everyone coming into the pits, just Gunzelman managing to continue a bit. He has already come into the pits actually as Gunzelman has to take repairs earlier on. So I believe now everyone out on circuit, bar this man, Paul Joseph Plist, has come into the pits. But Plist will probably take a right turn here. And yes, he was keeping us guessing for a little bit there, but the British driver is into the pits, and now everyone has taken a pit stop in our 51 field.
Meyer right now only 1.3 seconds away from Samarco. Certainly definitely one of the smaller gaps that we've seen at the front of the other field. We're seeing drivers still in the pits. There's Kolashaw there back in the pits. I'm not sure what happened to him. We saw he was in the pits a couple laps ago, so maybe I was confusing him with another driver, or he picked up some kind of damage. That was interesting. We'll have to figure out what happened there.
Apparently, actually, one man hasn't come into the pits. Ketzel Larsen. My bad. Apologies. But I don't know how Ketzel's managed to pull off this one, but he's still going. Or maybe it just isn't. Maybe it wasn't being registered on my system. I'm not entirely sure. But there is Ketzel Larsen. Apparently, he pitted on lap 1, so he might be into the pits very soon. The drivers are limited to 60% fuel. That's why they're having to pit quite so early. If they had 100% fuel, then they would not be far short of the hour, and I think at several rounds of the championship, maybe not this one, but maybe at other rounds, they would just fuel save and try to make the entire distance on a single tank, but expect Larsen to be in very soon. He's got Marcus Beifeld now moving past him, and Beifeld keeping up with Carl Winkler, of course with Marcus Gunzelman still yet to make his proper representative pit stop. This is basically the battle for 3rd position, with Taj Edwards catching up to them, and also Daniel Dennison as well, who has had a couple of setbacks, Dennison, but he is still top of the amateur drivers, actually getting ahead of Castellozzi during the pit stop sequence. However, I say that, Dennison did pit on lap 8, so I think Dennison needs to pit as well. There's a lot of drivers who are a bit out of position after taking early pit stops, so you will still need that big loss that you get by trundling down the pit lane here at Road America.
One driver that certainly out of position, and I'm looking through our live timing screen to figure out where he ended up, is the second DeBover twin. Of course, Jeremy DeBover, as you see on screen now, he has moved up to 12th as Larsen pulls into the pits, but his brother, was he involved in the incident? I'm not really sure. Yeah. I'm looking through
to
see what happened
position now for Navarre. And yeah, his pit stop the whole time was fairly normal. He hasn't made an extra pit stop. So yeah, not sure what's gone on there with Navarre, because like he said, he was close to his teammate. He's now 22 seconds behind his teammate.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I gotta wonder, maybe there was an accident that we're just forgetting, of course, with the amount of carnage and action, and of course the round of pit stops that we just saw. We might have had that wiped from our memories, for lack of a better term, but DeBover is dropped back like a rock right now. He's running in the 25th position, right ahead of Cal Larsen. Still a fairly decent run, but compared to Jeremy currently running in 12th, certainly a tad disappointing, because he was running up there just a few positions behind Jeremy. So I gotta wonder there was some kind of extracurricular incident there that cost them dearly. And right now we're seeing back up at the front with Samarco. He has pulled away now from Meyer, so that was strange there with DeBover. He must have been involved in an incident. Certainly this man, Samarco, hasn't had an incident all season for the most part. He's just put together a pretty great race, and even though he's still, even though it's less than a 2-second gap right now towards the front, he's still put together a great drive so far.
Yeah, really consistent, and yeah, you very much put it well there. He just hasn't had any problems so far this season. We never see him make a mistake. He always seems to have a bit of margin in qualifying, and Anthony Samarco very much en route for another race victory, and Ismail might well be runner-up for the 2nd time this season as well. Would be a very comfortable runners-up position. If only Samarco wasn't there, then dare I say, we'd be saying that Anders was in line for potentially a dominant championship. But instead, he is firmly second best at the end of this round if the results remain as they are. Jeremy De Boer being caught by Kieran Smart again. And it looks like Kieran Smart has once again overtaken Jeremy De Boer. So Smart back up to 12th position. Elsewhere, Starzinski is battling Nick Yanni, and I think that's Starzinski moving past. He was 0.6 of a second faster on that last lap, and Yanni is at threat of losing a couple more places now. He's got the recovering Thomas Asfalg, who I believe, was it Asfalg who crashed on the exit of the final corner earlier on, tried to get into the pits, and lost probably the best part of 15-20 seconds due to that. He's trying to recover. This would be his 16th place if he could pull off this move.
You are correct. He was the one that had that big slide there coming out of the final corner and nearly got hit by two Porsches who went either side of him trying to go into the pits. That was a very close moment for him. I'm sure Thomas had to be kicking himself there, just not really about the mistake, but just being stuck on the side of the road there for so long, as we're seeing a run wide there. I don't think there's a lockup. It's certainly Cesar Cabral running wide in turn 5. He's still up 28 positions, so great drive from him right now as he sits 23rd. But touching back on a point I touched on probably about 10 minutes ago at this point, I mentioned how there are only 10 drivers towards the top 25 of this field that were actually in the pro category. I just went through a couple laps ago. There's only 8 now, so we're seeing something that we haven't seen too much this year. We're just seeing the pro drivers run into so many issues throughout this race, and right now you can see as we switch to graphics now, you can finally see how from 13th on down throughout the rest of the top 25, there is no pro driver. So that is something that we haven't seen so far this year. Very strange. It's peculiar not seeing a whole bunch of red towards the front. Certainly the top 4 runners are the other pro drivers. Carl Winkler is at the end of this field, and he might get overtaken here by I can't even speak now, by Marcus Beifelt, who's put together a good race. But the lack of pro drivers in the top 25 is very strange to me. I don't know what you think about that, Sam.
Yeah, in the top 25, there's 8 pros, 8 AMs, and 9 pro-AMs. So there's really no correlation when it comes to the top 25 as it stands. Thomas Pugh into the pits now. I thought Pugh was having quite a normal race, but maybe he took an early pit stop. That is his second pit stop of the night, and only taking 13 seconds worth of fuel. So yeah, just needing to get a little bit further. I think he did make an early pit stop to Pugh, so he drops down to 27th position now. Let's promote one more pro into the top 25. Kettle Larson now in that 25th position. Emmanuel Olivieri also there. Good to see so many drivers get back out on circuits. We have got still 43 the 52 cars running in this event. And of course you do need to finish within 6 laps of the race winner in order to score points, which is easy enough as long as you just get the one fast pair, but of course anything above that and it can be curtains for you, and you can go away pointless, which of course the 10 rounds can be costly. Even though you do have a drop score, you very much want to keep those points coming in, because even just finishing in say 40th place does get you about 20 odd points, which could make the difference in the championship hunt. Here is Jack Wells, leader of the Pro-Am Championship going into this round, or joint leader. I don't think he will be for much longer than in 40th place, but you can guarantee that he will stay out there as long as he possibly can to score every point. And Kazuki Fujita, 2 top 6s so far this season, only 41st for him, and with 16 seconds to the next car, looks like it's going to be a fairly lonely evening for him to the checkered flag.
I was looking at that as soon as we cut to Wells and we could see the leaderboard well down the order. I saw Fujita there. I'm like, what in the world has happened to him? I think he was involved in an incident. I believe he actually, if I remember correctly, he was involved in that incident as they went into Canada Corner going down that very narrow back flat-out stretch. So I think that might be the reason why he's dropped back, but certainly a very discouraging performance so far from Fujita. And you can see Kettle Larson has now made a mistake. He's towed back to the pits. So I've got to wonder what happened to him. He was running in the top 25, so certainly not the best run, but now he has dropped through the order and is now hopelessly out of contention as he takes a tow back to the pits. Certainly kerns for his race and his chances of scoring well tonight.
Paul Joseph having a nice run of it, up in 31st place, but I think that might turn into 32nd base soon because Eric Rosser, he was running up in the top 10 in the OC. I say he may have even got into the top 5 briefly, but he was definitely involved in that instance at the kink that we saw on lap 4 or 5 of the race. And he will easily make that one. Clist will know it's not worth fighting that. And Rosser up to 31st position now. But Clist still up 16 places from his race start. Looking elsewhere about as well, if we just, cycle through the fields, a few drivers who haven't been shown. Alexander Skerret in 23rd place, having a bit of a quiet race at the moment. Navarro de Boivo, of course, we have seen a fair amount of the DBR by Muck Challenge driver behind him, but then Olivieri, Hugh with an extra pit stop. Thomas Firm in 27th place. Jay Walsh having a real nice time of it, actually. Is Walsh. He's up there in 28th place as it stands. And Matteo Kornagi and Paul Korshaw rounding out the top 30. Don't think we've seen Alex Bevans for Koala Racing in 35th. Fantastic name, by the way. Koala. It's lovely to say. Everyone at home, go say the word koala. Not koala, but exactly how he spells it is just wonderful. Simon Kroll for Beast Racing, and a very action-packed spa, I remember that. Again, a bit under the radar tonight, 36th place. Stephen David and Kim Andre Borkland rounding up the 35 drivers before we go back to Wells and Fujita, who are following just a moment ago.
Firstly, Koala. Secondly, you mentioned Mattia Kolnagi. We saw he was involved in that very unfortunate incident there in the very narrow section as they exited turn 1. Had a car spinning ahead of him and he had nowhere to go. He was running in the top 5 overall, but got caught up in that accident. That wasn't his fault and it cost him dearly. He's now dropped through the running order. But he has made a bit of a recovery. I believe he was, after having to take that tow with that car that was just totally destroyed. And of course, having to tow at that section of the track, it's a very long trundle back to the pits. So the fact that he has managed to recover and is right now currently in the top 30, I believe. Actually, is he in the top 30? Let me check. I'll have to fact check myself. Yeah, 28th. So, oh, it's 31st on my screen. So
apologies, maybe I was what? Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Sorry about that. So yeah, he's running 31st right now, which even though he isn't running in the top 30, has still managed to recover. I'm sure he's not going to be very happy to finish 31st compared to how things could have gone in this race had he not been involved in that incident. I still feel bad for him because as soon as I was going to mention the fact that Anders Meyer and Antonio Samarco, who are running first and second and have been for a majority of this race, as soon as I mentioned how they had pulled a massive gap away from Kolnagi gets involved in the incident, so I'm going to have to write him a personal apology note after this because I still feel awful about that. That was probably the worst commentator's jinx I've ever done here on Apex Racing TV, and I feel awful for it. I'm sure Kolnagi will probably feel a bit awful about the result he gets on paper, but he has put together a pretty good recovery after that crash.
Marcus Gunzelman coming back to the pits. I don't know why he's putting tyres on because he's probably only going to need about 8 seconds worth of fuel. In fact, he goes back on the jacks very quickly and taking a little bit more fuel. Maybe it was just the one tyre actually that he took. I mean, 11 seconds, I don't think that's enough time to take 2 tyres, but and he wasn't even on the jacks for the whole 11 seconds, so maybe just one tyre being taken by Marcus. He's back out on circuit. He was actually putting in some very nice lap times. Had to make a pit stop earlier on and he took the car pretty much as far as he possibly could there, and now he's got 12 minutes to get any extra positions he could get. He could still get a top 12. I think Jeremy De Boivo is catchable. I think 8 seconds for him to catch. But he has got a few cars in between him and De Boivo, so it might be tricky. Speaking of De Boivo, the Navarri variety is having a furious battle with Emmanuel Olivieri right now. Olivier was much faster on that last lap, and there's a little bit of a side tap now between the two of them, and Emmanuel is up to 24th place, and Navarre has to settle for 25th. That was only a matter of time, so that one's going to be made as Leon Leo, who's having a real nice round. He was battling with Dirk Bouts for a moment, then he's still battling with Dirk Bouts, and he's past Dirk Bouts. I think in all of that though, Simon Andre Livingston has got past the pair of them. He's up to 19th place.
They both went wide going through turn 5, and I think that cost them dearly there as they lose a position there to Livingston, I believe that was. So, sorry to go back to this, but the battle that we saw between De Boyer and Oliveri, that was contact there when Oliveri finally got past Boiver, and that was some very heated stuff there at this point in the race. You got to imagine that tempers are starting to flare a little bit, and drivers are trying to use every trick in the book to get past. But that was both of those drivers making contact. I believe De Boiver tried to do like a bump and run there on Oliveri as they went through turn 1, and then as Oliveri finally got past, I think he might have made a slight swipe at the car, saying that 5 times fast, but that was some very heated stuff there from those drivers. So I think in the as we're finally in the last 10 minutes of this race, I think we might see some drivers making a bit more contact, get their elbows out, and I think we might see some more heated battles. I think this might be a prime example of this. Byfeld is going to try and get past Carl Winkler, because that would be very impressive on debut here on the ARL GT3 trophy. To get a podium in the AM category, to get a podium overall would be very impressive. So I think we might see some elbows come out there.
Is Navari's car a bit damaged there? It almost looks like it's crabbing. No, I think it's fine. Not bad. But he has had to come into the pits again, so this is... this one's just got away from Navar. I'm not quite sure why he's making this extra pit stop, because I think his first pit stop was at a normal time. I wonder if it's a drive-through. The drivers are limited to 20 incidents, and it seems like Navari has reached that limit, as I'm sure a few other drivers have maybe eclipsed as well. And so that is why he's had to chunder down. That is a bad drive-through. All the tracks on the calendar to get a drive-through at. This is maybe the worst one. Watkins Glen is fairly long when we visit that next week as well. And that one was painful for De Boer when he gets spat back out on circuit right in the battle. And Daniel Dennison gets spat out into a wall as well. He has collided with Alexander Scuret. We've barely seen so far in this race. And how did these two come together? Well, it was a direct contact between the two of them, and maybe Dennison didn't leave enough space, and the Street Trends Racing car behind did a brilliant job at picking the gap. I think that was Chris Crook who was able to survive.
Yeah, Chris Crook expertly navigates those two cars and manages to avoid contact. I'm sure he's got to be very happy the fact that he got through that cleanly. But those two drivers there, that was just tough, hard racing. I mean, we're 52 minutes into a 1-hour race, so these drivers are definitely going to be racing a lot harder than they have been throughout all this race. So I think that was just an incident there of good old hard racing. You can't really put blame on either of those drivers. They're just trying to make up positions in this late stage of the race, and unfortunately for the both of them, it cost them dearly.
Really great defensive right now as Winkler is holding on against Byford, who we haven't seen be very aggressive so far, but as you were saying before, you know, it's the final 10 minutes. If a driver is going to be aggressive, it is going to be now. Roberto Castellozzi holding on for the Pro-Am victory against Christopher Otterholt, but maybe for not very long, because Otterholt has got alongside for turn 6, and he's passed. The Norwegian leads the way for what I want to say is maybe the first time in this race, honestly, in the Pro-Am category. We've had a fair few Pro-Am leaders, but from 32nd overall, he is up into the top 6 as it stands. And he is already pulling away 0.6 of a second clear against his Italian rival.
It is great stuff from him, up 26 positions from where he started. That's towards the high end of the field, but we've seen a lot of drivers cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter. I've already said that about 3 or 4 times on this broadcast, but that's really the best way I can describe it. Using my American win wisdom, we've seen drivers plummet through the field. Certainly this driver, Thomas Wangen, has plummeted through the field. You can see down 26 positions, currently battling with, I believe that is De Boiver, who we saw had that drive-through a couple laps ago, and Collishaw. These drivers are battling now for the 28th position with Wangen, who has had a pretty cataclysmically bad race. He got involved in a couple incidents, I believe, and it's just not been a good day in the office ever since. Was battling there. That's contact there. Oh, boy, that's Collishaw and De Boiver going off there, and both of those drivers parked in the middle of the road. There's De Boiver backing up there. Oh, Antonio Samarco was close to getting involved in that. It's a good thing that those drivers got out of the way when they did, because we could have seen our leader, who's been dominant all throughout this race, get caught up in that. But that was a bizarre incident there. I hate to say it, but I think there was a small little left flick of the steering there from De Boiver as he rejoined the track going into Colishaw's car, so I don't want to make assumptions there, but that did not look very smart from my end.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think De Boiver sort of got forced off beforehand and then went over that bump and perhaps unsettled the car. So, a bit of karma being right there. But, yeah, has very much negatively affected both of them. I think maybe one of the most entertaining drivers so far tonight. We've seen plenty of them. We might get a replay of this one. Hey, so this was on board with Samarco. 2.5 seconds in the lead, but that was very nearly obliterated because he sees this mess in front of him. Didn't really lift a whole lot, did Antonino? Unfortunately for him, no one tried to rejoin the racing line. And so he was able to get through cleanly. 4.5 minutes of this race to go. We have got 3 more laps, which are going to be completed in this race. Only just, but will be 3 more laps. And I hope that everyone has put in enough fuel into their car in order to get to the end. Oh no, Castellozzi. No, that's Bevan's apology. Bevans has crashed. Castellozzi lost a position, but Bevans has had a crash. Unless maybe the two of them were linked. I think they may have been.
Oh, we'll see. Nope, just a single car accident here. Went really wide there. Just no big slide there. I gotta want. That's whoa,
that's
boy. Yep, that's. Oh boy, tough for Castellozzi there. He gets involved in that car. He's wrecked beyond repair. Tough for him. He was putting together a fantastic race there. I believe he was running in the podium positions in the Pro-Am category, and through no fault of his own, with just an errant Bevans there in the middle of the road, he gets taken out of the battle and is going to have to come back to the pits with an absolutely wrecked Porsche 911.
So this is when we hope that he's still got his faster pair available. Otherwise, he's going to finish this race in about 38th, something like that. The likes of Nylander, Borkland, Fujita, Wells, who are at the back of our runners at the moment, will overtake him. But let's see if this car magically fixes itself. It is absolutely destroyed. I'm impressed by the damage model. What's going on with that car now? I mean, it looks like it's being pulled by a rope or something. It magically fixed it. He did have a faster pace. He's accidentally not unticked the tyres, which is wasting himself a bit more time. But it's much better than what it could have been. Cesar Sebral is trundling down the pit lane at the moment. He might overtake him. This might be the slowest overtake of all time. And he has overtaken him, just. But I feel like the 236 might be able to overtake, so at least Castellozzi's got something to fight for in these closing stages. They're going to come out around Thomas Verm and Eric Rosseth. In fact, Verm and Rosseth both getting past, and Castellozzi straight away on the gas, and he wants to get 26th place and maybe even higher if he can possibly do so.
Is Cabral given a drive-through penalty? It didn't look like he stopped while he went down the pit lane, so I gotta wonder if that was a drive-through. We haven't really mentioned the incident points throughout this race, throughout this broadcast, throughout the season for that matter. But we already saw one driver get a drive-through penalty. I gotta wonder if Cesar Sebral picked up a drive-through himself, and that is the reason why he was trundling through the pits, as now involved in the battle with Castellozzi. But this is a battle that we've been looking at throughout the second half of this race, really the last quarter of this race, to narrow it down a little bit more. Byfeld has put together a fantastic run. The amateur driver currently running in the 4th position, battling with the pro drivers all throughout this race, and definitely applying a lot of pressure to the back of Winkler in the late stages of this race. We have less than 2 minutes to go. I believe we might be taking a white flag next time by. So I'm sure Byfeld is going to look for a way to get past Carl Winkler, but I'm sure even if he doesn't get past Winkler and finishes this race in the 4th position, he still has to be very proud of himself. Certainly, if we were giving out a Driver of the Day award, Byfeld would definitely be my pick.
Yeah, I think this, like I said before, I think this is his first Apex Racing League event, so it is really impressive. Amateur or pro, frankly, to perform this impressively on your debut. Of course, an hour-long race as well, a fair bit longer than what these GT3 drivers are used to, as he runs a little bit wide just over that bump. And that does put him off. You can see he has no straight line speed there in comparison to Winkler. Winkler was pulling away almost the entire pit straight despite being in a draft, which explains why Byfeld has struggled to overtake. Taj Edwards has been just about 1.5 seconds behind these guys for half an hour now. Never quite close enough to overtake, but if they do start battling, then Edwards might be close enough to start putting some pressure on. As Samarco comes around the final corner to take the white flag. One more tour of this circuit. And if it weren't for Samarco and Maya, it would be one less lap. They are that far ahead of the rest. 3.5 seconds, so he's opened up to, and dare I say it will be comfortable Samarco. We don't usually have a chat with him. We do usually have a chat with Anders, and it will be interesting to hear if Anders is happy to at least reduce the gap at another circuit that the McLaren looked to be strong at. But at the same time, it might be disheartening again for Anders to perform at a high level as he often does. Still come out second best. Castellossi looking every which way, but he can't get past Cabral by 26.
Keep an eye out on this battle, because if these drivers get involved, the first person that'll approach them, if these three drivers have any sort of incident, the first driver that would be on the scene would be Samarco. So for Samarco's sake, he hopes that these drivers try and just stay in a nice straight line, don't get involved in any incidents, because if they do, Samarco might be quietly crapping himself like a few laps ago when he caught up to that incident there with De Boyer. So I think for Samarco's case, he wants to have a quiet last lap, as he had a fairly quiet race all throughout tonight. Right now, he's pulling a gap even more, 4 seconds now to Meyer. So I gotta wonder, maybe Meyer made some sort of mistake right now in this last lap. But still, Samarco putting together a fantastic drive, as he's done in all two races so far this year, and he might want to make it 3 for 3 for wins this year.
Gunzelman with a slight mistake. Not sure what's happened to Marcus Gunzelman, unless he's maybe low on fuel. Yeah, I wonder if Gunzelman is low on fuel, because all his sector times are rubbish right now. Gunzelman actually pitted last of everyone, and maybe was anticipating one less lap because his pace is absolutely falling off the cliff, or he may have damage, so he might drop down below 14th place. But out in lead is going to be another race victory for Antonino Samarco, and it's going to be 3 on the bounce for the German driver in his McLaren, and he takes a dominating victory once again at Road America. Maya ran him as close as he possibly could in second place, but it is a second runners-up spot of the season, and Carl Winkler is on course for a very nice podium from 19th on the grid. The Course Sim Racing driver is going to have a very nice points haul. Marcus Byfeld will get very close, and on his debut will be able to win in the amateur category. He seems pretty happy enough with it, with that weaving, but Winkler does take home the last step on the rostrum. And top of the Pro-Am drivers is going to be Christopher Otterholt, and by a decent margin as well. 15 seconds clear of Thomas Asphaug. After so many issues for his rivals, Christopher kept it clean as anything, great pace, and from 32nd on the grid, finishes in 6th place. Gunzelman trying to get the car to the line, but I mean, that is a very steep hill for him to get up to on the last lap of the race.
Yeah, he's probably barely on half throttle right now. You can just hear that Mercedes engine, sorry, that BMW engine, my apologies there, got my manufacturers confused there, but that BMW engine is just barely spitting at this point. He is running on fumes and a prayer at this point, so I think, barring a major disaster here, he will take 17th position.
Oh, it's going to be close. Here comes Leo. Can he get him? No, I think Gunzelman got it.
Yep,
oh, apologies, no, that was a back marker, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, I forget who that was. I believe that was Christopher Crook there. That was the lapped car, but we're seeing some more battling here. This is between Eric Roseth and Mattia Kolnagi. Kolnagi has managed to make it up to P23. We saw him a couple laps ago. He was down in 31st. Of course, got caught up in that incident there a couple laps ago. He's going to lose a position. He's sputtering on fuel. You can see the flames spinning out of the back of that car. And he's going to lose 23rd position right on the line to Eric Roseth. But still, great recovery there from Mattia Kolnagi, but I'm sure that finish has to irk him a little bit, so he might be a bit frustrated after this race, but still fantastic recovery from him to even finish inside the top 30.
Thomas Vermeer ran out of fuel as well. His last lap was, or maybe Cabral just caused him past him, to be fair. Yeah, Cabral, his fastest lap was actually faster than Verm, so he managed to get him on the last lap of the race. Clist has already crossed the line. I think he was maybe top of the laps runners, so it's 31st place, and gets to come into the pits nice and early. So all good for the Olympus esports driver. But what's a... Well, you can describe this race with many adjectives, and some of them aren't all positive, because it was a bit of a mess in total, in conclusion, with several incidents, one on the exit of turn 1 on lap 1, and one through the kink, as Dominic Engel was just going through a moment ago, and that wiped out many of, particularly our top 10 drivers, but drivers generally. And after a couple of fairly clean rounds, I know Fuji had that little bit of an incident at lap 1. Yeah, a much more chaotic round tonight. We'll see if going to the B race format, the double race format next week, makes any change at Watkins Glen. But there's the results. Samarco once again at the top, 4 seconds clear of Meyer, then Winkler, Beifeld, Edwards, Otterholt top the Pro-Ams. There's Engel, Bass, Smart, Asfalg, Starzinski, Jeremy De Boiver, then it's Nick Yanni, Crook, Livingston, Bouts, Gunzelman, Leo, Olivieri, Pugh, Willems, Scarrett, Rosseth, Fornagi, Castellozzi, Cabral, Verm, Vangen, Sorensen, Kroll was in 30th place, then was Klist, De Boiver of the Navari variety, David, Wells, Walsh, Fujita, Bjorkland, Nylander, Samson, Collishaw, Dennison, Avens, Larson, Horg, Montini, Kleissens, Burnt, Bianco, Moldecleve, Isaacson, Devlamnik, and Toroshki. Those bottom 10 not scoring points. Like I said, a mess is one of the adjectives you could use for some of the incidents out there. But it is just a narrow circuit, not really anyone necessarily at fault, and just bouncing onto the circuit we saw a couple of times. Let's see what interviews we get. Well, Ron, I'll let you have first pick, as I let you have first pick as well at Fuji. Who would you like to talk with first?
I think, looking through the drivers we have a chance to interview here today, the one I want to interview first is Christopher Otterholt, who ends the race as the Pro-Am winner. Christopher, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. How's the race?
Hello. Yes, yeah. What can I say? It was chaos, I guess, in the start there. But really good result for me. But I don't think that was just because of my pace. I think it was everyone else going off track.
I can definitely vouch for that point, how we had a very chaotic race tonight. Do you think the nature of this track, with how narrow it is, with the walls very close to the edge of the circuit, do you think the nature of this circuit really caused the amount of chaos that we saw tonight?
Yeah. Maybe in the start there it was absolutely packed into turn 1, and you can't make a lot of mistakes. If you get one wheel on the grass, it's pretty much over. So
Certainly saw.
Yeah.
Certainly saw a lot of carnage throughout this race, but one thing that I didn't see a lot of, at least from my perspective, was a lot of drivers using the draft to get past each other. How important was a draft for this race tonight?
I haven't. I got actually home from work today. I haven't been away for 2 weeks, so I had absolutely zero practice going into this race. And yeah, the draft. There was some draft, but the braking zones are they're hard to utilize after a big draft. At least for me, with no training, alternative passing opportunities, and yeah, I had to focus on racing line.
certainly put together a very quiet race from your end. We didn't see too much of you on screen, but as the old saying goes, to finish first you have to finish, and you did exactly that in the Pro-Am category tonight. Christopher, thank you very much for joining us. Anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, I have to thank my team for having a setup ready for me, IGL Coatings, and our sponsor, Sand Trafikkskole, and also Elverdi. Thank you.
Great. There you go, Christopher. Thank you very much for joining us, my friend. Fantastic race. Hope to see you throughout the rest of the season, my friend.
Hope so.
Well, that was Christopher Otterholt there with a very strong result to finish top of the Pro-Am drivers. And I mean, it's tricky. I don't want to bore Anders again, because I think I've dragged him up every time, and I think there's only so much chatting to myself that I want to subject to an individual. So instead, I will drag up Carl Winkler, who joins us now. And Carl had already had a very strong start to the season, to be fair, with a couple of top 5 results. But, well, you went one step further tonight, Carl, despite not a fantastic qualifying. A podium result. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm not sure if I deserve it because it was like absolute madness in front of me at the start. But yeah, just try to keep it clean, just do my laps and don't fight anyone or do anything stupid, and suddenly it worked out, so I'm happy with it.
I feel like you were probably fairly close to both the lap 1 incident and the kink and the incident at the kink as well. What was your perspective of both those crashes?
Basically just seeing smoke in front and started praying, to be fair, slowing down and then trying to understand where the crashed cars will move next and try to find the gap, which worked out both times, fortunately for me. So it's not like you can some situations you can do something about it, but like at the start, I think it was T2, someone came like a torpedo over the grass on the inside. So I didn't see him until he crashed, I think, the car in front of me. So if you're in the wrong place and you get hit, you can't do anything. So I was just lucky actually.
We saw in those closing stages you'd be really hounded by Marcus Beifeld, but it seemed like it was your straight line speed which helped you out. Was that something you were aware that your car was set up for those straights, because it seemed to be imperative when it came to defending?
Well, to be fair, I just started laps doing in free practice, so I wasn't aware where the car might have its strengths. I mean, the Mercedes is normally strong in the straight line, and once I figured it out, I was quick enough in the spaces where it matters, and he didn't dive me or something, so it was pretty clean, and I just kept my eyes in the mirrors and tried to count the laps down, which worked in the end.
Well, it's been fantastic to see you perform so consistently well once again, Carl, and of course you'll be up to 2nd place in the championship now after tonight. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
My teammates, for you guys, for the broadcast. I will watch it later and see the mayhem from the live perspective. So I'm pretty happy with the standings, but to be fair, I have no idea how I ended up there. I tried to keep it, but let's see, the pace is not that great.
Well, hopefully you keep up the good results, and maybe even more pace could come later on in the season as well, as you say. But thanks for having a chat with us, Carl, and best of luck for next week.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Carl Winkler there, who I believe has finished in 5th and 3rd so far this season, which is really consistent results, and like I said, has propelled him into a fairly comfortable 2nd place in the championship now after 3 rounds of the season. So it really does just demonstrate how well performing he is doing at the moment. Ron, who would you like to drag up next?
Well, you skipped out on interviewing him, so I'm going to bite at the opportunity to talk to your 2nd place runner tonight, Anders Meyer, who put together a fantastic race. Anders, we saw throughout this race that you're really the first person to really break a sweat to Samarco, make him worry a little bit about taking a commanding win. How's the race from your end, bud?
Yeah, it was really unexpected. Since Fuji, the day after Fuji, I went away for a week and came home yesterday. And in the weekend, I did a 12-hour endurance night race in real life. So it's been haven't been the preparations I really wanted, but this track has always provided good results for me, and I will traditionally have okay pace here. I still struggle with the quality pace in the BMW, but at hot temps it doesn't look like it's possible to get the one lap pace in. But over the race, it's a pretty good car. So all in all, the race was fine. I tried to put pressure on San Marco in the final minutes, but sadly got impeded into the kink by a blue flagger. So couldn't really. I don't know if I would have made it anyways, but yeah, still sad.
Certainly, lap traffic was a really big concern that we saw for a lot of drivers all throughout this race. Some lap traffic deciding the fate for a lot of battles all throughout this field. Talk us through how difficult it was to deal with the lap traffic at a narrow course like Road America.
Yeah, of course, it's the track that makes it difficult because it's narrow, as you say, and it's fast, and that's probably why it's so many incidents as well, because things happen so fast. All in all, the blue flag guys did a great job. I think it was only the last incident that was pretty bad, to be honest. But yeah, P2 was... I saw earlier there was a lot of incidents, so P2 was pretty safe anyways. So that was my goal immediately. So Marco has too much pace. It's nothing we can do about him, but yeah, so going for P2 is the goal. So yeah, but all in all, lap traffic was okay.
Yeah, I will say one thing, and there's a very good compliment to the fantastic race you put together tonight, is you've been the closest to anyone to San Marco so far this year, so you can take that as a badge of honor that you put together a very good drive. Could you take the viewers through how hard it is to keep up to San Marco, because you've gotten the closest view of anyone of the McLaren of San Marco so far this year? So you could you give the other viewers a glimpse into how hard it is to race with a competitor as high of a level as San Marco is?
It's really difficult. I went for a setup with very low downforce, so I had him in the straights and maybe the first and second sector, but in the middle sector he was just pulling lengths on me. So it was kind of equal because I gained on him on the straights and the first sector, and then he gained on me in the middle. So, but it's impressive. The league I did before this, I drove against, I'm not gonna say team names or driver names, but I drove against a guy that wins the special events, in the top split. And I'm not sure even him would be that far ahead of San Marco, or even if he would be ahead on some tracks. So it's pretty amazing that he drives this series as a privateer, and not that many of the top teams have picked him up. That's pretty weird, but yeah, it's. I saw we have some different strategies, because I go for more fuel saving than him, and on this race I think I filled a bit too much, because I could go flat out the last 4 laps, and with my strategy I shouldn't be able to do that. So I think I overfueled a bit, but in the end, yeah, the pace he has is incredible.
I will say, in a race where we saw a lot of drivers running out of fuel towards the late stages, I think overfueling might have actually helped you, because if you ran out of fuel in the later stages of this race, that would have been absolutely heartbreaking from your end. Anders Meyer, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. Anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to CarX, KTM, and Mosa, and a special shout out this time to Racing Lab. They did, like I said, a real life race this weekend where we won. So a big shout out to those guys, and to come here and do P2. It's been a good few days for the team, and thanks to Apex as always.
Thank you, Anders, for joining us. Hopefully, in the future for the rest of the season, you can challenge San Marco even more, because that was fantastic to finally have someone break him into a sweat. Anders, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you throughout the rest of the season.
Thank you.
That was Anders Meyer, your second place runner, and I will pass it off to you, Sam.
Yeah, we'll have a quick chat just around the broadcast out with Ethan Bass, who joins us now. Congratulations, Ethan. A lot of places gained out there tonight. I mean, considering that this season so far for yourself has been very unlucky on the most part, being involved in incidents, you managed to get through it fairly cleanly, unlike many others.
Yeah, I think all the luck happened tonight. Got unlucky at Spa, so well, I'll take it.
Absolutely. How was the Mercedes out there? It seemed like you were able to pull off a lot of overtakes once you kind of got through those first few laps.
In the opening laps, I was mostly just kind of trying to find my rhythm. I like this track a lot, so I always comfortable around it, but it's always a case of you need to learn who you're driving with, and there was a 1 hour race here. I'm not impatient, so I just needed to kind of gauge whatever people were doing around me, and ended up then following Kieran Stewart for a lot of it, I think, and then trying to just do our best and get through the race and do a bit of fuel saving. Worked out in the end. Managed to make a lot of places in the pit stop by the looks of it.
Yeah, you really seem to jump from about 12th position where you were before into the top 10. We changed the race format next time up. We go for the double race format. Are you looking forward to the sprint races, or are you quite fond of these 60-minute events?
I've actually always been a bigger fan of the longer races, the better, but that's my kind of, because I've always did endurance racing when I first got into sim racing, so we'll see how it goes. I forget what track we're going to, so I don't know, and I forget the actual reverse grid format. I'll have to double check it, I think, but I think it should honestly be fine. You might be a bit more rough and tumble, but and then have to actually go for moves rather than having to wait for mistakes, which is my general forte. Most of my overtakes were just pouncing on people, making errors, running wide, so see how it goes, but it shouldn't be too bad. I've got a car that I like, so even if it's not my favourite.
That is excellent. Well, thanks for having a chat with us. Ethan, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Thanks to you lads for the broadcast, and thanks to Hybridtune, Demon Tweaks, Fight Chloro Cancer, and Sim3D. Made a mess of that one. And cheers to the lads at Orbit for the paint. I'm
sure Jack will give you, potentially the sack. He is very harsh as Jack, so we'll see about that one. Thanks for joining us, Ethan, and we'll see you back next week.
Yep, no worries. I mean, Jack's fine. I'm not driving my personal favourite, but I'll take it. I'll take a V8.
We will see you next time, Ethan.
Thanks very much.
Ethan Bass there, finishing in 8th position in his best result of the season, up 28 places, which I believe was joint most places gained of anyone, along with Chris Crook, who finished in 14th place overall. But like I was saying before there, Ron, we've got the change of format for next week. We're going to Watkins Glen as well next week, so we very much stay in North America. Very fun circuit again, very popular track, and I think one that the drivers will look forward to practicing on. It's got a fantastic flow to it.
As a resident American here on Apex Racing TV, I have to say I adore Watkins Glen as a race circuit, and I'm sure these drivers here in the ARL GT3 trophy will put on a fantastic race that they've put on so far this year. Certainly a big departure compared to the tracks we've raced on before. Spa, Fuji, and Road America all have very long flat-ash straightaways, and Watkins Glen, certainly while it is a fast circuit, it has a lot more twistiness to it, and it's a lot smaller than some of the other tracks we've raced on this season, so it'll be nice to see what kind of style of racing we'll have next week.
Well, we will be back, of course, next Tuesday for that round of the series. But of course, do make sure to like this broadcast and subscribe. 15,000 other people have already to Apex Racing TV, and check out our streams like the Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup tomorrow, along with Radicals on Friday, F3 on Friday, F3.5 on Saturday. We've got Weekend Warriors on Sunday, iRacing Israel on Monday, and many other streams as well happening on Apex Racing TV. Do check out our social media platforms as well on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where we constantly post extra little clips of our various racing. And, of course, big thanks as well to SDK Gaming, to Virtual Racing School, and to Apex Racing Academy for supporting the channel and supporting the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy as well. But for now, from myself, Sam Fitzpatrick, from Ron Mons, and from Samuli Kume, we are going to say goodbye, and we'll see you back next week at Watkins Glen for 2 races as we enter the B format parts of the season. We'll see you then.